Hey folks, Ryan Heritage here at First Baptist. I'm going to walk you through how we are going to set up and clean up for communion on the Sundays that we've gathered. So come follow me. I'm on the second floor here in our Daniel building, and we'll go into this small kitchen where we keep all our communion supplies. So when you get here on a Sunday morning, none of this will be here on this table, but you will see these type of plastic containers. Come and look and see what this looks like in here. This is where we keep a majority of our supplies for the setups that we do. So we've got these plastic totes on the bottom here, as well as this cardboard box that has our larger plates. We've got our table cloths, and then we've also got our small napkin cloths. We've got our juice here, and this juice is stacked appropriately for age. So in other words, use the bottles that are on the front first because they expire first, but they do have a really long shelf life of about a year. So use the bottles in the front first and then go make your way to the back. And then this area right here is really for the pastor's communion supplies. So we've got the larger metal pieces and his larger tablecloth that goes only in the traditional service. The contemporary service, you can use a regular cup and plate. First thing you're going to want to do is come over here, and we're gonna clean just a few things. We're gonna get some gloves, we're gonna get a knife, and we're gonna get a pair of scissors. We're gonna come in here to the kitchen, and we're gonna wash the scissors and the knife so that there's no contaminants. We've got dish soap, sponge, all of the above, and you're gonna give that a good washing. Now that we've got our utensils washed, don't forget to wash your hands in this process, because you got to remember that gluten-free is not a preference for people, but an allergen. So whatever breakfast you had on the way in, you want to make sure that you wash that off your hands before you put gloves on and prep all this food. So all of the bread on Sunday mornings is going to be stored in the refrigerator right here in this top right section. And you're also going to have a loaf of bread for both services, one for each for the pastor. We're going to take gloves, put them on. And ideally, we're going to have 5 deacons helping to cut the bread in the morning. With 5 of you present, it will not take a long time. For our purposes right now, we're just going to use one of these plates. These are washed and cleaned from the previous communion. So we take our knife that we just washed, and what we're going to do with this loaf is cut it in half, but not completely, just enough so that Will can rip it, or the pastor can rip it. Some of our pastors don't have really big muscles like me, so they can't rip the bread that well. So we have to cut it halfway for them. So that's what we've done. We've cut it halfway, and then they should be able to break it. For now, we're just going to stick that back in the bread, and we'll use this on Sunday. Don't do like I did with the gloves. I just grabbed the refrigerator with the gloves. Once you put the gloves on, continue to keep a sanitary environment. Last thing we want to do is give people the body of Christ and all of them get sick from whatever illness we might have. So we're going to open up the bread. This is all gluten-free bread. It has 2 containers. The first container is just an open bag, and then the second container is this sealed thing. We're going to cut the bag open. And then what you want to do with the bread, once you've got it open, is we're going to make about 6 to 8 cuts on every slice, excuse me. The tiny slices, we won't get a lot, so we'll get about 4 pieces out of that. I've cut it in half and cut those in half again. The bigger, that one's still a little bit smaller, but the bigger loaves, we're going to be able to cut it in half, and then either cut it in thirds or cut those in half as well. For this one, I'm going to cut it in thirds. You're wanting to stick to a piece where people can get their fingers on it, and there's enough to dip, but it's not so much so that it's a hamburger when they're coming to get this bread. Once we cut up the bread, we're going to stick it right back in this original bag, okay? So we take our pieces and we stick them in this bag, the whole loaf. Once we cut this whole loaf up, we're going to stick it in this bag. Now this bag is ready to be distributed. You're going to have about 100 to 140 pieces of bread per loaf within the bags. So we're going to use that to serve both services, and we're also going to use the juice, which we already talked about. I'll open up one juice in a second so that we can see about how much to put in a cup. One of the last things with the bread is we want to make sure that we've got enough bread for everybody, but we also want to make sure that if we have leftover bread that we haven't used, we can start with that with just the very next communion. So we'll throw this bread out this time because it's from October, but you can see that we've got frozen bags of gluten-free bread here that we've already cut up from the past communion. It's frozen, so there's no contaminants for it. It may not taste great, but it's already gluten-free, so it's not going to taste great to begin with. We're going to throw this out for now, but on days that you serve communion, start with these frozen bags, and the best thing you can do if it's all broken up is give it a good crunch, and all the pieces will break apart, and you can use that. Most likely at the traditional service, since you're going to be setting up earlier in the morning, just allow that bread a little bit more time to thaw off, and it won't be so cold anymore. Now we're going to talk about the setups for Sunday morning. This tan setup right here is going to be for contemporary. You're going to need 3 plates and 3 cups. There's 2 stations at the front of the chapel, and there will be a deacon assigned to the bread plate and a deacon assigned to the cup plate. You want to make sure that you fill the plates up for bread at that service with around 120 or more pieces. Remember, you got about 120 in a bag, so that should be about 1 complete bag full. Be cautious with it, and also, just as we did when cutting the bread, make sure that you're using gloves when you are using the bread. A good reminder is that whoever's doing the bread, whatever deacon is putting out the bread, they only deal with the bread. That way they're not touching a juice bottle with a gloved hand and then coming back and doing the bread. Think of contaminants, like where's this bottle been? We don't know, it's been on the storage shelf. So if we're taking a clean glove and grabbing a dirty bottle, we don't know. After we put the bread on the plate, we're going to take one of the napkins and we're going to place it over the plate for sanitary purposes. You can do the same with another napkin over the cup. For the second service, we use these 2 setups. The majority of the cups, actually all of the cups in the second service, are going to be this smaller cup, except for the choir loft, which is this larger cup, just because we don't have enough of these. These smaller plates are used over the majority of the sanctuary. I'm going to put a picture here on our video that shows where these setups are and where the deacons need to be in the traditional service when we're serving communion. Those are all the deacons that need to be in that area, but they are not necessarily all the stations. In other words, there might be 2 deacons to a certain station, but it's only 1 station there. These larger plates we only have 4 of them, and they're at the front area of the sanctuary so that they can serve the most people that are in the congregation. These plates just don't hold enough bread for 120 pieces of bread or so to come through. So we use these larger plates here in the traditional service. So these will be the 4 stations that are located at the front of the sanctuary. This size plate is fine for the choir and the rest of the setups in the room. When we go to filling up juice in the cups, make sure that when you open a bottle, the seal is sealed, just so that it's not a used bottle. And then in these size cups, plus those, we're not really trying to fill it up at the top. I want to fill it up about 2/3 full. Because remember that they're going to be dipping bread in it. We don't want people's fingers going in the juice, and we also don't want juice to be overflowing. And in case somebody has unsteady hands or anything like that, juice isn't falling out of the cup. So then I've got this leftover juice, and I'm going to go take it to the next cup and do the same thing. For contemporary, you'd probably want a little bit more than that. This cup is much larger, and it's used only for the choir loft, so you can probably use about a whole bottle in this size cup. So that's for setting up the juice, setting up for the bread. And remember, these are the 4 large plates that are used down in the front in the traditional service in the sanctuary. These are contemporary. These are traditional in the majority of the rooms. So when I talked about 3 setups for contemporary, I talked about these 2 in the front. but there's also one more set in the back, a complete plate and cup. We call those the floater stations. That's for our members or congregation that have a little bit more difficult time coming down and partaking in communion. So 2 deacons will be in the back of the room for contemporary, watching the congregation, and if there are certain individuals that can't stand up or choose not to come down, we just go and visit them and say, would you like to partake in communion? And then we serve them communion. It's happens less in the first service, but it will happen a good bit in the second service. So there's 2 sets in the second service that we need to set up for. Those are going to be in the back hallway on wooden tables, and it's just going to be a regular small set and this. If by chance you run out of these sets for those floaters, we have extra sets of these contemporary ones. For the pastor's set, we've got a silver set. Actually, this is contemporary. These are labeled. So this one right here is the Lord's Supper for the contemporary service, plates and goblets. Make sure that those get back in this section for the cleanup crew. Let's go in here and look at the pastor's set. So the Lord's Supper for the pastor is up here on the top. It's a silver cup, a silver plate, and then a silver pitcher. The pitcher does have a lid, but the lid is broken. So let's just pour juice into the pitcher, and that way he'll take the pitcher at the second service, pour it into the cup, and of course the loaf that we cut almost all the way through will be the one served on the plate, as well as contemporary. I did misspeak. There are 4 sets that you need for contemporary. One of them is the pastor's set on the front table in the middle. This is also the tablecloth that gets used for the traditional service for the pastor's set. So we've got the juice, pastor's set. Here we've got them marked for chalice and patens. These are typically the blue ones, all of the blue ones. There's that one container for contemporary. There's another set for the blue ones. And then this box right here marked fragile has the large plates for cups. Let's take a look real quick at what a setup looks like in the traditional service or contemporary. Here we are in the sanctuary space, and we've got a setup completely finished here for the traditional service. So underneath this napkin, we've got our plate with our bread already cut up, and we've also got our cup filled with juice. So after we fill the juice, after we fill the bread, remember we take these napkins, we place them on top just for sanitary purposes. No flies or anything like that will get into it. And then we've got our setup. In our sanctuary space, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the floor and 2 in the balcony. So you've got a total of 8 tables that need to be set up in the traditional space. You don't have to set up tables in the back, but you do need 2 setups of plates and cups in the back. And remember, those are for the floater sections. And then in addition, we've got our one main setup for the pastor in the traditional, which we use the silver set for. Again, in contemporary, you've got 2 setups in the front, the pastor's set, and then the one floater in the back. And those use the tan plates and cups. And here, we've got the light blue. Everybody gets this except for these 4 tables, including this one. I've used a small plate for an example, but this table right here would get a larger plate, which will hold, we need to do about 150 per large plate, or really just max it out, because sometimes we'll go into 2 smaller plates. Thank you very much. Now we're going to look at the cleanup side of this and how we're going to store these things. Now we're going to look at the cleanup side for communion. So we've got our used cup and plate. If we've still got bread on it, we're tossing it in the trash. We're going to hand wash this plate, and we're going to pass it to another deacon. Same with the cup. After we've washed it with the soap and sponge, pass it to a deacon. Now use paper towels, dry it off. And then once they've cleaned it, they're going to put them back in these same storage containers. This is really nice pottery that we've got here, so we want to make sure that we handle it with care. So the goblets have their own storage containers that they go back in, okay? They go back in this sealed kind of thing. And make sure that we get the blue sets back with the blue sets, because those are all traditional, and the tan sets back with the tan sets for contemporary. Here's a container for one of our plates. So this is how we put the plates in. Put them in this styrofoam type wrapping. and then we stack them carefully on top of each other. If you come across mixed sets, please go ahead and take the time to divide them back out to the way that they should be. That just makes it easier. They need to be dry before they're stored, so just please make sure that whoever's drying them use those paper towels and make sure they're dry and good. Then as far as the tablecloths and the napkins go, we picked black because the only thing that really happens with these is that they'll get some grape juice on them occasionally. So let's fold them up. We do wash them, but go ahead and fold them, and then we'll wash them together throughout the year. So that's pretty much the complete setup for all of our contemporary needs. Thank you so much for serving, and if you have any questions, let me know. Another thing I want to mention is in October we have World Communion Sunday. So we're going to use these large wooden trays. There are 4 large ones, and then 5 or 6 of these smaller ones. These 4 larger ones are the ones that go up in front of the traditional space. The smaller ones we use around the rest of the room. Now, because we have fewer of these, we actually double up in contemporary and traditional, but you can use the same tray for both setups. So after the first service, go ahead and take them over to the second service. And for the setup team, for the cleanup team, that's one of the important things, is to make sure that you go over to both spaces and get all of this material. There'll be a gray cart in here on Sunday mornings that you can use to transport all of this stuff into each space. And typically we transport it in these containers so that there's no issue of anything breaking. And then when we get to the spaces, we start dispersing it as needed. And that goes for the juice and for the bags of bread. So you can just grab these containers of juice, put them straight on the cart. The bags of bread, put them straight on the cart. These containers, your tablecloths, and your napkins. And you can go to the contemporary space, and then once you're finished with that, go ahead and go to the traditional space and do that. Because this does take a little bit of time, typically it takes around an hour to do everything. So I would suggest you get here about 7:45 in the mornings for communion, and that's going to allow you to cut the bread up quickly. You've got a team of 5 people. That's 2 loaves per person. It only takes about 5 minutes to cut up 2 loaves. And then you're going to go set up the contemporary space, and then you're just going to walk right over and set up the traditional space. So even when the contemporary service starts, you're still finishing up on the contemporary space, and this will give you plenty of time to either attend the contemporary service if you want to, or to get ready for Sunday school. Thank you.